I see it's 9:30 by the clock on the wall, which we treat as our official time here, and it's August 30th. We are in the St. Croix County Government Center's room 1284 in Hudson, Wisconsin. This, I imagine, is the time and place that was publicly announced and published in the newspapers. We'll come to that in a moment, but this is supposedly the meeting of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Buck Malick, and I'm the chairman this year, and therefore I call the meeting to order. I'll ask the other members of the Board of Adjustment to identify themselves and test their microphones, and the staff folks who expect to speak to do the same thing. Beginning with you, Mr. Peterson.
Dave Peterson, citizen member, Town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, Town of Hammond.
Greg Telejohn, County Board Supervisor, District 14.
Dave Nickham, Town of Baldwin, citizen member.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator in the Community Development Department. And I'll just note that I have Jared Wayner, a planner who's been on board for, what, a couple months?
Almost 2 months.
Almost 2 months, who's assisted with some of the work for the Shifsky conditional use permit. And also Kevin Graybo, sitting in the back, is here if either of them can answer any questions the board or public may have better than I can.
Very nice. Do you expect to call on them if needed, or are they planned to give speeches?
You can direct it to me. I'll do the presentations, but if I feel they could maybe better answer the question, I'll suggest that they come to the podium.
Okay, we won't test their voices on a microphone quite yet then.
Okay.
All right, and we have Julie Peterson doing the recording and running the technology for us here today. At this point, I will state for the record that I believe this meeting was properly noticed and published. That is to say, the notice of the meeting and what would be covered by the agenda was put in the newspapers and announced to the media and to people who had put themselves on a sign-up list, all in proper format to satisfy the laws of the state of Wisconsin. If anybody has reason to think that wasn't done properly and there's some defect in our public notice, please speak up now. Well, another month with it never happening in over 10 years, so good. Those of you who think you might like to speak today should sign our registration and take the oath by your signature over there before you step to the podium to speak. I'll tell you later on when the time comes for you to speak, but we do not administer the oath normally one at a time, but ask you instead to sign in advance and take the oath of the truth of your statement, as I've just indicated. We have minutes from a previous meeting, board members, the meeting of July 28th. They will stand approved as they were printed and distributed unless somebody has a correction to offer to the minutes. Do any of you board members have anything for the minutes? Okay, they'll be deemed approved then. We have 3 matters today. 2 of them involve public hearings. I propose that we take them in the same order that they were published. The Shifsky matter, then the Rivard matter, and lastly the Apple River Hideaway matter. Board members, do you have a different suggestion for the order? And staff, it's okay with you. Nobody has asked for or justified a change in that. Then we'll proceed. Mr. Wozniak, if you're ready for the Shifsky matter, would you make the staff presentation?
Very good. I'll note you have on your agenda a conditional use permit application from Carson Shifsky to operate, requesting permission to operate a contractor storage yard for a landscaping business on property at 861 180th Avenue in the town of Somerset. And I'll note that the property in question is located in an R2 district, residential district, with shoreland overlay. And it's a 5.68 acre parcel, and the request involves constructing and operating a contractor storage yard and contractor shop. Included with what was provided to the Board of Adjustment and available to the public was the staff report that I'm reviewing, the conditional use permit application, and including a site plan for the proposal. Well, let's... If we can make this fit the screen. We have, just reviewing some issues with the site and history. The property in question is a residential lot located within the shoreline overlay and due to a 1 acre navigable pond in the northeast corner of neighboring property. I'll note the site has an existing dwelling, detached garage and shed. And there's a man-made pond just under 1 acre in size immediately south of the proposed area of disturbance and southwest of the existing home. And the man-made pond identified in the 2020 aerial has been, I should note, has been removed from the property, so to avoid any confusion with that. Further on site review and history, the property, Lot 1, was divided by CSM into 4 lots in March of 2022. Lot 1 is 5.6 acres, the subject property here. And the access is off the access road known as 180th Avenue. The property is located near the southeast corner of 85th Street and State Highway 64, 180th Ave intersection. And it's, I'll note it's an at-grade intersection. Regarding the operational plan proposed for the contractor yard, landscaping company, it's a landscaping company with storage of equipment and excess landscape materials. They're proposing hours of operation of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The crew meets on site to get equipment ready for jobs off-site and then drops off equipment at the end of the workday. 5 to 6 full-time employees and up to 16 part-time seasonal employees and parking for employees are accommodated with the request. The equipment that may be stored on the property may include 7 trucks, 3 skid steers, 2 excavators, and various trailers, and outdoor storage of landscape-related materials. Operations will also include snow plowing, which will be on a snow event basis. Times are based on the snow event and intensity, and employees would operate in the same manner as during the summer. This is a higher-level overview of the site plan, but I'll go to a little more zoomed-in version. The driveway is located off of the access road. The proposed expansion of the existing shop building and material storage area is noted on this. No new hard surfaces will be added to the site, according to the applicant, and trees to be planted in the southeast field to buffer residential property to the south are part of the request or proposal. And then a portion of the Circle Drive is to be removed, and that Circle Drive kind of loops around the southern part of the parcel. Regarding the building addition, it's a 60 by 60 foot addition to the northwest side, street-facing side of the lot, and landscaping along the front of the building is shown. I'll note regarding review, Town of Somerset recommended approval on August 3rd at a regular town board meeting, and their action was included on this slide in the staff report. I'll note that staff have not received any comments or recommendations from Wisconsin DNR regarding this CUP, as it is not within an environmentally sensitive area. The Board of Adjustment, as you are aware, have criteria set forth in section 15.550 of the chapter 15, the zoning ordinance. Provisions 6A through E are the criteria used to review conditional use permits. Your options for action include approving the request, denying the request, or tabling and postponing the decision to consider information gathered or to request additional information. Just to run through on proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law. We've of course included our usual information about the property to make clear the property, the subject property, and where it is, and where you're considering allowing this contractor yard. The contractor storage yards are allowed within the R2 zone district with an approved CUP, so hence why you're considering this action. The applicant filed the application for board consideration according to section 15.330 of the zoning ordinance, provisions related to contractor yards. And we note the existing septic system was installed in 1996 and last inspected on October 29 of 2020 and found to be compliant. I would note that we've called out in the findings the use provisions for contractor storage yards, just to make that part of the record on this action. The property is adjacent to R2 residentially zoned property and therefore subject to conditions listed in 3C, hours of operation, and 5, screening, in finding 7, as referenced above. I'd note that the applicant has indicated that 8-foot white pines would be planted along neighboring property lines, and that additional screening with berms and grading could be added in the future if needed. The proposed downward-facing overhead lights on the north and west side of the existing shop will be compliant with subsection 4 regarding lighting in finding 7 above. I'd note in terms of our evaluation of conforming with the criteria for conditional use permit, the proposed use, whether it complies with applicable standards of the zoning district, development standards, and any applicable use regulations. We note that if approved, the applicant shall be subject to all standards listed in section 15.330 and all other applicable regulations. And I would add that it appears their proposal would be compliant with those requirements. The use is in place in other areas of the county and in similar situations and has not shown to decrease property values. So that's the premise that the staff is working under in regard to evaluating it on this criteria. The proposed use would, whether it would not constitute a nuisance by reason of noise, dust, smoke, odor, lighting, water or air contaminants, traffic, stormwater, or quality or pests or similar factors, impacts on surrounding properties would be negligible, as the applicant describes the activity occurring both at the beginning and end of the work shift within the hours required in section 15.3303C. I'd further note that the request does not violate the spirit or intent of the chapter as listed in section 15.105 purpose, as the use is allowable by conditional use in the R2 zone, and the proposal is meeting the requirements set forth in, again, in section 15.330. The use, as far as the use not being contrary to the public health, safety, or general welfare, the primary access to the property is within a quarter mile of access to State Highway 64 and will be the primary route used by the applicant. This may change if there is a local job that is to the south, but in most instances it will be with that route. Staff recommendation on this, based on findings of fact I've outlined and conclusions of law, staff recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the conditions referenced in the staff report. These are conditions 1 through 16, and these generally follow the findings, and I won't read through verbatim, but just call out a few things here. I'll note that the property shall be modified consistent with the proposed site plan identified as Exhibit 3, and that a buffer of a mixture of evergreen coniferous trees shall be maintained along the southern property line, and existing fence on the north side of the property shall continue to be maintained as a screening mechanism, and also that the landscaping screening shall be installed no later than September 1st, 2023. And I'll note that we have a condition calling for a final inspection of the property by either myself or designee no later than September 1st, 2024, where all proposed modifications improvements shall be completed. And in the event that any associated building permits are revoked or expired, then this permit shall become invalidated. I would further note that we have a condition that reads, no use is hereby authorized unless the use is conducted in a lawful, orderly, and peaceful manner. Nothing herein shall be deemed to authorize any public or private nuisance or constitute a waiver, exemption, or exception to any law, ordinance, order, or rule by the town of Somerset, St. Croix County, state of Wisconsin, or the United States, or other duly constituted authority, except only to the extent that it authorizes the use of the subject property in any specific respects herein. And I would skip down and note that all of the uses permitted in the R2 zone shall continue to be permitted on said premises, and in addition thereto, the uses described in this CUP or conditional grant are hereby allowed on said premises. And I'd note further, jumping down to number 13, any change or addition to use of the property, buildings, or modifications of or addition to the property, building, or facilities, or changes to the current project details shall require review by the zoning administrator to determine if the use may be allowed. And any new owners of the property must adhere to the standards and conditions of the approved conditional use permit. The last couple are standard conditions we include typically in all our CUPs, and I won't read through them. At that, staff are available to answer any questions you may have, and Mr. Shifsky, I believe, is present, and if he wishes to speak or you have any questions for him, he is available.
Board members, do you have any questions of Mr. Wozniak? It appears not. I do. I note in your staff recommendation that condition 4 talks about a buffer, a mixture of evergreen and coniferous trees. The applicant proposed only evergreen trees, but I take it you've included the coniferous trees because of the way in which our sometimes extremely dry summers are taking a toll on the pine species. Is that the reason for that?
Well, maybe I'll have Jared speak to the assumption on landscaping, if I could.
Yeah, the reason for that is he's proposed just pine trees, some white pines, and when they get older and taller, they no longer offer screening at ground level. So I added other coniferous trees to maintain that buffer.
With the thought that they will be species of coniferous trees that maintain a low understory cover?
Correct.
So some might actually be called bushes, I suppose, huh? Or like
Spruce trees, I mean, it could be any number of, I kind of left it open to allow for whatever was available for them, so.
would lilacs count?
No, because they're not evergreens.
But they are coniferous, right?
Yeah, they would be considered deciduous.
Yeah, they're deciduous, yeah.
Oh, you
They
know.
lose their trees.
Oh,
They lose their leaves, sorry.
I took
Yeah.
a wrong turn here. I'm going to suggest that we add deciduous trees to it for the reason that I've indicated, that not all of the evergreens and coniferous seem to be thriving from the talks that I've heard, and now I'm becoming a witness, but my understanding that is our zone is going to become hostile to the evergreen trees in a way that we haven't experienced before. Now and some will have to be planted yet, right? In condition 4, you've said they shall be maintained, but some aren't yet even planted, right? So they will be. The town recommendation included some language about berm, and there's language about certain dirt piles are to be converted to a berm, lowered so they aren't visible from the road. Is that work yet to be done and to be supervised by you as this goes forward?
Jared, have you had any discussion with the applicant on that issue?
I did not have any discussion on the berm. On that, I didn't really see what the berm would have added, so I didn't really include that in the conditions, because the landscape area is already established with white pines.
If the board you have a concern about that, you could direct that to the applicant, and maybe he could respond on what his intentions are.
The town board meeting was August 3rd, apparently, and as of that point, Mr. Shifsky stated they'd like to lower the grade and berm the parcel, a long-term goal. And then when the board got around to making their motion, they said a trailer will be moved and a berm on the south side for the new lots and neighbors. So I take that as of August 3rd, the work had not been completed, and it was thought by the town board of Somerset that it ought to be. But then I didn't see mention of it exactly in condition 4, where I kind of would have expected it. So maybe we'll need to, depending on how my fellow board members feel about it, do something to kind of follow along with this suggestion from the town board. Naturally, town board comments are only suggestions. They're not binding on us, but they have value. The this buffering of, visual buffering is proposed in condition 4 only along the southern property line. I understand there's a fence along the north property line, that's the Highway 64 side. Was there, just tell me why you did not recommend visual buffering on the east side of the property. Apparently the adjoining property is also zoned R2. Not sure we have a map that exactly shows that, but it might be something else. It's shown as unplatted in this, on page 11.
Yeah, that is
Is there
also,
s-
that's also owned by the applicant.
I see.
As well, so it was all split off, there was 5 lots that were created, minus the remnant parcel. And the reason why we didn't include any buffering on that side, because there is a significant wooded area between those 2 lots already.
Fair enough. If and when the owner of that unplatted land wanted to plat it, it could be dealt with at that point if it was felt appropriate. Last comment, I guess, is with respect to signage. It's conceivable that the applicant might find a way to put up a sign that could be observed from State Highway 64. It might be a great place for a sign, I don't know for sure. How do you, a lot of times you say in the conditions that a sign will have to be dealt with by a sign application. Is that your thinking here too?
Yeah, they would have, I mean, it's stated in the zoning ordinance that they would have to apply for a sign permit, and they do show a tentative location for a sign on their site plan. So it's in the the northwest corner of the property.
So you're anticipating that there will be an application and you'll deal with it at the department level without involving this board?
That's correct.
All right, that's fair enough. That's all I have. Anybody here? Okay. Anything else, Mr. Wozniak?
I don't have anything else to add unless there's any further questions.
Sure. All right, now we'll hear from those people who are in the room and might want to speak in favor of this application, and that would include you, Mr. Shifsky. If you'd like to speak, you can certainly have that opportunity now. If there's something you don't like about the staff recommendation, and you think you'd like to, explain to us why we shouldn't follow it or should make it a different decision in your case, this would be an opportunity to do that. If you're perfectly happy with the staff recommendation, you don't have to say a word. Probably a good idea, I might just say, if you praise the staff for such wonderful people as they are, we'll begin to wonder whether you're in their pocket or they're in your pocket, and it probably undermines the whole situation. So you can skip that part. We're reasonably confident they do a professional job.
No, they did a wonderful job. What I just wanted to mention, just to maybe add some clarification for everybody, and then to introduce myself, I am Carson Shifsky, the one applying here and own the property. But the berming question and things like that that the town of Somerset recommended, we would, and I know it wasn't mentioned in the CUP, but we would like to do it as well, just from the other aspect of screening. The south side, where the evergreen screening is shown, does have 20 or so white pines that we transplanted on the property to move down there to help screen everything. And then along that edge, we'd also like to do kind of a berm, because we understand that as those evergreens grow, that the branches seem to die off on the bottom side. So that berm with some taller, native grasses or something like that on that would also help the screening perspective. So we agree with that. We want to do that, and we're in the process of doing that now to create just some more privacy to the new neighbors to the south. And then for the other berming, there was existing berming on the property when we purchased it a little bit to the north and then to the west side as well along 85th Street. That was done by the previous owner years ago. So that's helping with screening as well. So that's why there wasn't anything really proposed from that side, because you can't really see in there anyways from 85th Street. So I think, and then the other part of the town touching on the comment of a trailer, that there's currently a trailer parked there that we're just going to move to the back side of the building before, kind of the spring season next year, just to help keep it clean and tidy. So stuff isn't as visible from the road. And that's our overall intent as well, is that things aren't visible from the road, just from a safety and security standpoint. We don't want people just driving by seeing stuff, really, because it sometimes goes missing. So.
I was out viewing the site last week, and it seemed to me, I remember as I was pulling up there that I thought I saw a work vehicle pulling out to the west there, maybe around that green area, but it doesn't show a driveway there. Or what, am I imagining things that was?
The neighboring lot that was divided, which is just off the screen, there is an existing driveway there that was put in for that subdivision, and then one of the gentlemen that had purchased that, who's actually a friend of mine, is working on cleaning up the driveway and was putting some riprap and stuff like that for erosion control on his property. So that wouldn't be related to us.
Is there anybody else in the room who wants to speak in favor of this topic? How about anybody who wants to speak about it another? Could have suggested I turn on my mic. Anybody else who wants to speak in favor? Anybody who wants to speak against, or in a neutral way, make any comment that would help the board to make the best possible decision? In that case, the next step would be to close the hearing, which would mean that nobody else would get a chance to introduce papers or documents or testimony, and the board would proceed to make a decision based on the evidence that we've heard already and the file that we've read, same thing that's online for everybody to read. Anybody want to speak? The clock indicates it's 10:03. I'll close the hearing then and ask my fellow board members if you're ready to make a decision on this. Yes, Joe.
What was the verbiage you wanted in there about the trees?
Well, having had these assurances and recognize that the staff seems to be thinking the same way that I was, I think I could live with no change at all. Well, it says evergreen and coniferous trees, and I think we all agreed, or I would suggest that we say evergreen slash coniferous slash insert the word deciduous, just so we have a record of that. I think in this and the last few cases we've had in the last few months, we've started to trend in that direction. I'd like us to keep going in that way with respect to our buffers generally. And if we need to get an expert in here to get some testimony, we certainly can. Ms. Denzer.
I would just like to suggest that you also add that it should be bermed, since the applicant is in favor of that, the town requested it, and it's always best in any situation to document it rather than just assume it's going to happen.
Okay, so we'll add to 4 a buffer of berm and a mixture of evergreen, coniferous, and deciduous trees shall be maintained along the, planted and maintained. I think let's, since we're making some changes, let's make that too. Not all of them have been planted yet. And then maintain, which means, of course, keeping them alive along the southern property line. Did you get that, Jared, Mr. Weiner? Okay. Before I sign the document, I mean, assuming that this gets support from the rest of the board, I'd hope that you would insert those small changes. Yeah.
I'd move that we approve the request as amended.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Peterson, second by Nickum, to approve following the staff recommendation with the slight modifications about a berm and the type of plantings. Further discussion or debate? All in favor should vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And all who are opposed by saying nay. The vote is unanimously to adopt in that fashion. Thank you, Mr. Shifsky, for establishing another business in the county. We appreciate that, and doing it in a fine and responsible manner. We'll probably have the written decision for you. Well, Mr. Weiner is on his way out. I might be able to sign it today, in which case you can either pick it up or they'll email it to you or whatever. Yep. All right, Mr. Wozniak, I think it's now 10:06, but unless board members need a break, we'll just proceed right along. So we'll proceed to the non-metallic mining permit for the Rivard matter. A renewal and an extension of the permit is proposed. Thank you, Mr. Grayball.
Board of Adjustment members, public, and other Community Development Department staff. The next item on the agenda for the board's consideration and public hearing is a conditional use request for renewal and additional area of non-metallic mining. This, in the town of Somerset, this is for the Rivard Revocable Trust property, and I'll note that the agent for this application is Milestone Materials, Division of Matthew Construction, and they're requesting this renewal of the existing conditional use permit for this operation under the St. Croix County Non-Metallic Mining Ordinance, Chapter 14, for the Rivard Quarry, again, in the town of Somerset. They're also requesting to modify the CUP and Reclamation plan to start mining the 30 additional acres within the existing site, project site. Just to note further, more specifically, this site location is in the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter and the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 12. Again, in the and also parts of Section 7 as referenced both in the town of Somerset. The zoning district this is located in is the county's R1 residential zone district. And I'll note that as is customary, we've included staff report and conditional use permit application submitted by the applicant with your packet materials. I would note also that I believe Kevin Grabo just distributed a copy of an email that we just received yesterday from a neighboring property owner, from Paul and Karen Colham. And I'll address the content of that, but that could be referenced, I believe, as Exhibit 3, if it hasn't been done so yet.
Let me interrupt you briefly to indicate that it's a 3-page exhibit, but pages 2 and 3 seem to be big dark blanks.
What they are is, there are a couple images of a wall or walls that have a fine crack that
Thank you for clarifying.
may not have printed in a legible manner.
Thank you. Now that I know what I'm looking for, I see something. Good.
Yes. It's like reading ink spots sometimes with reproduced photographs. We have, just to run through the staff report on this item, I'll note that Kramer Company was the former operator of the mine. Milestone Materials took over the operation in 2020. I'll note that Milestone Materials submitted a new financial assurance bond in 2020 in the amount of $134,600. Milestone Materials will increase the reclamation bond amount to $253,053 upon approval of the CUP renewal. Some site information that's pertinent to this item. The mine is in compliance with conditions from the 2017 conditional use permit renewal. There are no complaints on record for this mine since the last renewal. And I'll note the site is internally drained. Current hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Friday. Hauling is permitted 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and blasting is allowed 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday. There are no changes proposed for hours of operation, and there is no mining into groundwater, and none is proposed. Some additional information, all 4 parcels in the application are included in the non-metallic mining plan previously approved for the mine site. The map below shows the new area south and east of the existing operation that will be mined, and I'll get to that. The arrows indicate the directions the mining will continue to move into over the next 30 to 40 years. Now, the operations plan and reclamation plan have been updated to include the area shown in orange on the map, and dust control measures, namely water, are used as needed. Erosion control measures are used as needed as well. Here's a aerial photo view of the site, and I'll show an image that indicates the expansion to the east and south as proposed. You can see the current and future plans. Reclamation and post-mining land use. I'll note reclamation is an ongoing process. Mining cessation is expected to occur in approximately 30 to 40 years. The post-mining land use for the mine will be passive recreation and agriculture. And the backfilled face and floor areas will be graded to a 3-to-1 slope. There will be no high walls left after completion of reclamation. And I'd note that no man-made features or related facilities will be left on the site after cessation of mining. A bond for reclamation is on file, and again, it will be updated if assuming approval of the CUP renewal.
Before you go on, let me just ask a couple of clarifications.
Certainly.
While it's still pertinent. The bond amount is considerably larger. Is that the result of the 5 years since the 2017 permit and just the increase in costs to do that kind of work?
Yeah, and I think it's to account for the growth of the expansion into the new area of the site. But
Well, let me probe that then. That was my second question. A part of this operation is grandfathered, as we say. That is, it is older than our mining ordinance. And that is apparently 36.4 acres. Is it your conclusion that that 36.4 acres is the maximum extent of the active mining when our ordinance was passed?
You know,
That's the-
I think I'll defer to Kevin on that, or Candy Anderson with Milestone. They may be able to answer that question more specifically. Kevin, would you?
Can you answer it, Kevin,
that
right
answer?
now? Yeah, step up to the mic, please. Let's just, if we can get it done while we're on that part, it's a fairly large and complex application, so my mind works better if I can deal with the thing.
Short
right at the
answer,
moment.
yes, that's the way I understand it. If you want to go into like the amounts of the reclamation per acre and all the way that's broke down, that's in the application itself.
Yes,
If you look in there, so,
I saw it.
yeah.
So 36.4 is the acres that are grandfathered, and therefore they don't have to be reclaimed as the mine goes on because they're not subject to our 20 acres open at one time ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, but it will be reclaimed all at the end of the mining.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And in the new area, they will have open and active as much as 20 acres at a time under the current ordinance. Is that the way it goes? So the reclamation has to deal with the possibility of a total of 56.4 acres?
Let me think about that a second.
Sure. I mean, they may choose to do early reclamation as they see fit, but sometimes it makes more sense financially.
I would have to look at this, but I don't believe they are subject to the maximum 20 acres of the new mining, because when they first came through for their first conditional use permit on this site with the Kramer Company, I believe that was in 2002, and our non-metallic mining ordinance to add the 20 acres of maximum mining was added in 2005 or 2007, so it was after the start that the Kramer Company had with the conditional use permit for their mining. The Rivard stuff was completely, that had started in the 50s, and that was something that was a existing non-conforming use prior to any ordinances.
So you're thinking that they could have the whole site open and not subject to our ordinance if they chose to do so?
Yes, I believe so.
Then why are they asking for approval to move into a new area?
It's just a part of their updations of the operations in the reclamation plan. The previous plan didn't include some of these acres, so as a part of moving into a new area, they're required to upgrade that operations plan and the reclamation plan for those areas.
Required to, you say? So they are subject to the new ordinance?
They're subject to ordinance standards, but they're not subject to the 20 acres maximum open.
So,
That's the way I understand it. Yes. Ellen's trying to say
Ellen.
something here.
I believe our non-metallic mining ordinance as an ordinance, not necessarily with all the details, goes back to 1985. So in that sense, they're subject to our ordinance, but perhaps not that particular standard. The state has standards, regardless of